setup's looking a little bit better this week. That's because I have dragged a second lamp into the equation that is pointed almost directly into my eyes, so I am suffering a lot for this art, and that's okay. Hello. I hate that that's how the chat started tonight, but also that feels about typical. Everyone, don't feel the need to be shy in the chat. Really just go off over there. Yay, look at these people. Okay, while we're accumulating folks, actually, oh no, don't make hello our thing. Maybe hello will be our always. I hate myself. I don't. I'm glad you're all here to see my new slightly better setup. I just keep figuring out how to add more lights and jerry rig my shitty room that was not made for this to be a little bit less shitty. Oh, look at those folks popping off over there. I really want everyone to like feel like they can use the chat, especially if this is your first time joining us. And also if it's not, no matter what your situation is. You can do emojis over there? Fuck, okay. While we're like getting people here, I want to go ahead and do a couple shout outs while I give people time to like show up and stuff. So first of all, shout out to Tumblr user Turnabout Prince, who very nicely informed me that they stayed up until 5 o'clock their time to watch the previous 2 streams and couldn't do it again this week. No hard feelings. I love you for doing that twice. There is almost nothing on earth I would stay up until 2 o'clock for 2 consecutive weeks in a row. So I appreciate that. And whenever you watch this, love you. This is Bam and Aries, and I want to yell as much as possible. Aries are allowed to yell. Aries are allowed to yell in the chat. Go hog wild. Shout out to Marjo. If Marjo is here, you also should be in bed. Don't do this to yourself. I am going to go mom on you in front of the internet. Roman, if you ended up being able to watch this, hi. If not, hi whenever you do watch it. I just wanted to acknowledge you because I feel like we have a good back and forth on the internet. Oh my god, Allison's here. Yay. Okay. Hi, Allison. There's so many people in this chat, and you're all nuts. We're going to have so much fun tonight, which is great. Oh, and Caitlin, I hope you're here watching this. You tweeted about it, so it'd be super weird if you didn't show, but, like, things happen sometimes. Oh, Allison, you blew this up onto your TV again. Okay, so for those of y'all who don't know me in real life, my friends have made a habit of watching these streams, like, on their TVs and taking a picture of it and sending it to me, and always when my face is in the most horrifying possible, like I'm like, and they're like, look, it's you, you're on my TV, and I'm like, why did you think this was a flattering image that I wanted to see? Just kidding, it's always cool and great. Send me your weird pictures of yourself watching. Don't do that, actually, don't. Cool. Okay, there's so much friendship happening in the group chat. I'm so happy. Okay. All right, so we're gonna get cracking tonight, as I'm sure most, if not all of you, you know what, scratch that. I don't want to assume anyone watches my blog for updates. That's presumptuous. But tonight we're going to be talking about hookup culture, and we're going to be talking about kind of the trend of catching feelings that gets ascribed to that, and why that's often treated as, oh my god, here comes the cat. Okay, he was on my lap this whole time. Arcane. There's the boy. There's the boy. Please don't, not on the laptop. Cat. Okay, we're just going to do it like this, I guess. So we're going to talk about hookup culture, and we're going to try something a little, oh my god, we're going to try something a little different for once, where I'm going to draw on some of, oh my god, Arcane, no! Okay. Yeah, there is a pic of me and the boy in the background. It's from when he was a tiny baby and he could fit on my shoulder. I keep it to remind him of when he was small and embarrass him in front of his friends. So tonight we're going to try something a little different, and I'm going to draw on my own experiences to make a point. That is bad sarcasm. That's what I do literally every week, and also on my blog 24/7. But the reason I wanted to talk about this kind of idea of stigmatizing catching feelings tonight, in particular, is because of a thing that happened in my actual life. It's not like a new idea, but I was just kind of sharply reminded of it. And I was like, let's make a stream about that. And then I did, because I'm my own boss. So kind of the inciting incident, the backstory to this, the supervillain origin story of this stream, is that a couple weeks ago I was uploading a new profile picture on Facebook. And yeah, I'm still on Facebook in 2019. Mark Zuckerberg owns my ass. He's selling my data to whoever wants that as we speak. It's whatever. I'm old and I can't escape. But I was uploading a new profile picture that was like of the, unflattering variety. It's a shot of me holding someone else's cat who's like flailing to escape from my arms. And it's like the kind of picture I use often on social media that's kind of like knowingly self-aware and attractive because I don't photograph well. I like to manage expectations. So like my huge. And it occurred to me as I was like putting that out on the internet to represent me and like my whole kit and caboodle on Facebook, that everyone would be able to see that, and that my pool of Facebook friends as of recently includes some people who I added after having had sex with them, as you do sometimes. And I had like the distinct thought, oh no, now they're gonna know I'm not cool, which was an absolutely bonkers thing to think about for like multiple reasons. One of them being I'm probably never going to see any of those individuals in person ever again. And secondly, because I'm pretty sure they didn't think I was cool to begin with. Because, immediately before the sex happened, I said, and I quote, I didn't bring anything to this orgy but bad jokes. And then probably nobody kicked me out, which is weird because you'd think that like a point would come when you're just like, you'll be punished for just saying every terrible word vomit thing that comes into your head. But no, the universe just lets you keep on trucking sometimes. Incredible. So also there's that hurdle. I was at an orgy event. But that's not important. What we're here to talk about is why I was worried about those people's perception of me at all, when again, they knew I was not cool and was not trying to be cool, and that I was probably not ever going to see any of them in person ever again. And the answer is a really simple one. I like these people. They're all very cool, nice, sweet people. I had a good time with them. It was one of the most positive sexual experiences I've ever had, and just like a nice hangout in general. And I think very well of everyone who is involved, even though I don't know a lot about them, and I hope they feel similarly about me. Which all sounds nice, but is actually spectacularly breaking one of the fundamental unspoken rules of hookup culture. While hooking up is generally treated as something that's desirable and good, having feelings about your partner or partners is not, especially not positive feelings. We're going to get, are we explaining the phrase kit and caboodle over? I'm so sorry. I should have. My whole shit other than kit and caboodle. Also, speaking of kittens, the cat is trying to escape my room now that he's not on my lap. 2 seconds. Do you want out? Here. Be good, I love you. Whoop. Ta-da. Okay, so 2 weeks back in our first stream, we talked about the sexual culture that expects and encourages people to go out and get laid as often as possible. And in that stream, I broke down why that high sexual bar is super unrealistic and frankly damaging for a lot of people's self-esteem. Tonight, we're going to talk about what's going on in hookup culture when folks actually do get laid and how that can also end up being really bad for their self-esteem if it's handled poorly. I'm not trying to sound like a depressing, evil Puritan minister who thinks that every possible sexual option is depressing. But we have a lot going on in terms of like cultural baggage around sex, and we're not going to get anywhere unless we unpack every single one of those boxes one at a time in this stream. So for this week's Sex Witch book club recommendation, we are going to be drawing pretty heavily on American Hookup by Lisa Wade, which is self-esteem is a fucking tightrope walk. You are correct. And there's a lot to unpack there. It's so many boxes. I'm hoping it's at least 69. It occurred to me today that if I do this up to at least 69 streams, I will be a happy camper. I'm a child and I'm sorry. So anyway, American Hookup by Lisa Wade. She is a fellow sociologist, a little bit more of one than me because she presumably has a PhD, in which she gathers testimony from college students all over America to find out what is up in hookup culture. I really like this book for a lot of reasons. One of the most important of which is that I think Wade takes a very sympathetic emic approach to studying young people having sex. There's another book called Girls and Sex by Peggy Orenstein that I would also really recommend, but Orenstein's writing can often veer into like, can you believe the kids think this shit is empowering and good for them? Blah. Whereas Wade comes at it from an angle that feels more like, it seems like some of the beliefs that the students hold are actually somewhat harmful. I wonder where that comes from. I'm a big advocate of blaming the culture that shapes the individual actions and not the individuals themselves, especially the young and vulnerable ones who are still developing their worldview. It should be noted, for whatever it's worth, like a lot of the students we talked to were first years, so like that's a mess, as we all know, I'm sure. Allison, we will find a reason for you to be on the 69th stream. Also, I want everyone who is not Allison to know that she has sent me a couple messages over Facebook in the time that I've been doing this, even though she knows I can't check them because I'm clearly busy. Everyone in the chat, please shame Allison. So before we launch into deconstructing hookup culture and when catching feelings, and I'm going to really heavily air quote that, Allison, I'm going to really heavily air quote catching feelings. There are a couple of things that I want to clarify right off the bat. One, for our purposes, casual sex is going to refer to any sexual activity that takes place between two or more people who are not in a committed relationship and have no intention of being in one. Maybe it's a friend with benefits that you're banging 6 times a week. Maybe it's somebody on Tinder that you met one time to get a hand job behind a Denny's. I'm not here to judge. It's going to be a catch-all term for like any non-relationshipy sex. 2, I am super obviously not against casual sex. I just told you I didn't. It was awesome. But if the internet has taught me anything, it's that critiquing a thing is very often mistaken for hating that thing and anyone who enjoys it. That is not the case. I'm not here to shame anybody. We're just really looking at the culture of hookups and the kind of unspoken rules that dictate a lot of hookups rather than like saying any individual is bad for having casual sex or even bad for not realizing that they are falling into those unspoken rules in that culture that can be harmful. We're going to dig into that a lot. The third thing, having said that, I'm totally aware that casual sex is not for everyone, and that's absolutely fine. When I advocate for like having healthier hookups and healthier casual sex, I'm not saying that's because everyone needs to be doing it. I'm saying that because I want it to be better for the people who are doing it. Nothing is for everyone. That is like sex ed rule number 1. If someone tells you that something is good for everybody, that person is wrong. So, oh well, the group chat popped off. I'm probably missing a lot of things. I did tell you to shame Allison. That's why it's exploding. Sorry, Allison. Shaming Allison is okay. This is going to be so weird for folks who watch it later. So let's get talking about what exactly the rules of hookup culture are. Wade devotes an entire chapter, which you can probably guess is the one that I've sticky noted the bejesus out of here, to talking about how there's this unspoken code of conduct among folks who partake in casual sex, pretty much regardless of their gender or sexual orientation, that demands pretty much total emotional detachment. Having lots of sex with minimal emotional entanglement is the best case scenario, while the worst case scenario is catching feelings for someone because that will make the sex complicated and inherently less fun. Wade observes that students go out of their way to emotionally distance themselves from people they've had sex with in a fairly predictable pattern. Whatever their relationship was before they had sex, it immediately gets downgraded by a level or 2. If they were strangers before, that's easy. They just never see each other again. If they were casual acquaintances, they'll likely be going out of their way to avoid each other and potentially awkward interactions. And if they were friends, especially friends who were hanging out regularly, they'll expect to spend less time together and even be deliberately cold in their interactions. And that's where this gets really interesting to me. Oh, wait, there's a chat history? I've been wondering if there was like a way for people to see what happens over here while I'm doing it. I feel like this enhances the experience a lot. Thank you for that info. I don't know how YouTube works. I am a 600-year-old bog witch who literally learned how to use a webcam specifically for this purpose. Wah, wah. All right. So in interviews, the students that Wade talked to insisted that they would behave that way to prove that no feelings had been caught, often actively trying to one-up their sexual partners to prove which of them cared less, all because to them, interactions that were friendly or even just polite would seem too much like flirtatiousness after they'd had sex. It wasn't enough to just act the same way they always had around the people they'd slept with. They had to go above and beyond to prove that the relationship hadn't changed. Now, we might have spotted the obvious fallacy there. which is that if you're acting differently, something clearly has changed, which is not shocking because ours is a culture that puts a lot of emotional baggage and expectations on top of sex. Um, like, we all basically grow up in a cultural soup of forces telling us that sex is like a completely unique act in its importance, like from religion, from family, from a lot of pop culture, from like trashy sex magazines and romance novels and all of that. In 2011 alone, there were two movies about straight white couples trying to have casual sex and then accidentally falling in love. Whoops. Because straight white couples will just fall in love in like the stupidest situations. um, at the Hunger Games. Okay, pause for the chat. I'm a virgin, so this might be dumb, but catching happy feelings doesn't seem bad to me. Ooh, okay. So we're gonna get big into that. Also, Emily, I see you. I like your all caps. Welcome. There's so many people that I know watching this chat where I talk about my sex life. It's like hanging out with me in person. I never shut up. So the idea of catching feelings is largely centered around this idea that like having had sex with someone, you are now vulnerable to catching romantic feelings, which is bad because then you can't just have uncomplicated sex whenever. You have to talk about feelings and shit and figure out what you feel about each other, and that's undesirable for a lot of reasons that we're going to get big into. So the problem is you can't have emotionless sex. We have feelings about everything that happens because our brains are designed to take input and react to it. At risk of sounding like a Puritan minister again, which I'm going to do a lot in this stream, sex elicits a lot of feelings, many of which are strong and difficult to ignore. To immediately stop sounding like a Puritan minister, many of those feelings have nothing to do with love or romance or even, like particularly intimacy. Having sex with someone, especially for the first time, especially if you don't know them very well, is going to give you a lot of things to think about. Do they like what you're doing? What do they think about your body? Should you ask them to do that one thing that you kind of like but are really embarrassed about? Will they think you're weird? Are they going to keep doing what they're doing? Have they noticed that you forgot deodorant today? Are you going to tell your friends about this tomorrow? Are you overthinking this too much? Is this normal? Normal is the big one. Y'all ask me about normal so much. Doesn't exist. And then, of course, there's that intense baggage that we all probably, I feel like that's a safe assumption to make, grew up believing that sex is like this ultimate act that is not like any other and innately has more significance. That's kind of one of those things that doesn't have to be true, but we made it true. At Emily, the concept of no feelings is big whack, all caps. Love the spacing. You're very correct. Again, while we don't innately catch romantic feelings as soon as we have sex with someone, there's this idea of like pair bonding or soul bonding that some particularly conservative sex ed programs push that says like once you've had sex with someone, you have an emotional attachment with them forever, and like breaking that will permanently damage your brain and or your soul. It's pretty heavily aimed at cis women, I've noticed, because we're fragile creatures. But a lot of us do at some point grow up and realize that you can have sex and it's not always like a soul bonding, life-changing experience. But if you have, that mindset in the back of your noggin, I think it's understandable that folks would be a little worried about like, oh, we had sex. Shit, are they in love with me now? Oh God, I'm going to jump out the window and take the midnight bus home. I got to get out of here. So I'm not saying that excuses the idea that like emotionlessness is something to strive for, but I do understand why a lot of people might think that it's something to be very careful about. Because we have these two very like diametrically opposed views about sex in our culture, where on the one hand we should have a lot of it all the time and it's great. That was the first stream again. But also like it's very important, has great meaning. So when those two collide into each other, it's like, oh well, I gotta be having sex because sex is cool and the best thing. But if I do, I'm probably gonna fall in love. So I've got to be super careful and just shut down all the emotions from the get-go, which is, I don't know if any of y'all have ever like existed, but that's not how feelings work, and it can't function like that. So sex is a lot of stimuli all in one place that you cannot stop thinking about. Even if we're not falling in love, every human being on earth is going to have some kind of feeling about that. Our default state is feeling and thinking and reacting. Emotionless sex is a lie because we can't do anything without having some kind of emotion about it. But that is not the popular perception of hookups at all. There was a study done by the College of New Jersey where they asked participants what they think most people feel in the middle of a typical hookup. And the two most common answers were one, pure lust, and two, nothing. Um, like literally nothing, like as if people, entered their sexual encounter and just immediately flipped all of their emotions off like a sex robot. I'm going to keep foreshadowing sex robots until the episode happens. It's getting there, I swear. Me and my sex robot consultation buddy watched Her last night. The one where like Scarlett Johansson is a sexy Siri. We're going to work through that. It's coming eventually, I promise. So that's concerning for me, the idea that you can just shut all your emotions off and that most people don't feel anything for many reasons. Here are two big ones. One, if we think that we aren't supposed to be feeling anything during sex, we're less likely to vocalize our needs for fear of being too needy. And if we assume that our partners aren't feeling anything, we're less likely to remember that they even have needs. And that's a recipe for sex that's going to range anywhere from awkward to mediocre to actively harmful to our self-image and happiness. There's already a huge disparity in who actually gets to enjoy casual sex, particularly amongst the cisgender heterosexual population. Surprise, surprise. In those cases, it's overwhelmingly the men who are enjoying themselves more. They are about 2 times more likely to have an orgasm during casual sex than their female partners. And hopefully all of you know that I don't think orgasms are actually the best way to measure the quality of sex. What I think is more indicative of the problem there is that a lot of women in these pairs don't even feel entitled to ask for more enjoyable sex when they're having their hookups. To circle back to Peggy Orenstein, whose book I don't own, so I can't hold it up as a handy illustration, unfortunately. In her book, Girls and Sex, she found a massive discrepancy in the oral sex that's happening. And I'm actually going to link y'all to a TED Talk about this because she gave a really good TED Talk about it that sums up all the points really neatly in like 13 minutes. So blowjobs are kind of seen as a standard for the men and boys involved in these hookups, to the point that very often women who say they didn't feel like having real sex will just like give their partner a blowjob and call it a night. And that's like a whole other thing that I will get into, how we define what real sex is. But the important thing that we need to talk about now is that it's very rarely reciprocated. And sure, like oral sex isn't everybody's cup of tea, but both Orenstein and Wade's interviews find that it's like pretty obvious that this isn't just about personal preference. Both of them report that many young women feel way too secure about their vulvas to even want their partners to go down there for oral sex. And a lot of young men outright admit that they care less about their partner's sexual pleasure when they're not in a committed relationship, which is charming. Are we talking about crushes over here in the group chat? Oh, we're also talking about Her. Yeah, the movie is just like Her. It's directed by Spike Jonze. It was actually very good. There was a lot to talk about. It kind of served as the capstone for our sex robot research. Like, I think we're ready to really like do the outline there. The episode, whenever it happens, is going to be really, really good. It is a big bummer. Let's talk more about that big bummer. A lot of the statistics, I don't want to be like that person who's like down with the cishetes, but a lot of the statistics regarding cishet people having sex are sad for cishet women. So disclaimer, obviously, yes, sex usually gets better with one particular person the more you practice it with them and get to know their particular bag of quirks. And I'm sorry that I laughed. I typed the phrase bag of quirks in the outline and then immediately was like, oh, that sounds like a really funky name for a vagina. So I'm sorry if anyone wants to take that and use that as your term for your genitalia. Have at it. You don't owe me any copyright. But having gotten to know someone usually improves the quality of sex. But what that does not mean is that you should completely and totally disregard the sexual pleasure of a one-time partner, because it doesn't matter. It does. That's a person. You should treat each other right. If any of you ever do that, I'm going to come to your house and steal your genitals until you learn to behave. Back in the 15th century, there was this book called the Malleus Maleficarum that claimed witches could like steal people's penises, which historically was probably just like women being blamed for some cis men having erectile dysfunction and not wanting to own up to it. Um, but like I really resonate with like a literal interpretation. I'd like to think maybe they were just like some very inconsiderate sexual partners, and these friendly neighborhood witches were just like going around going, none for you until you learn to reciprocate. God, I wish I was that powerful. Oh, Emily, don't take my genitals. I haven't done anything bad. I assume I'm a nice reciprocal partner. I guess I can track someone down and make them testify to that. I'm so worried about the image of you stealing a bunch of vulvas and penises, carrying them in a Santa bag. No, that was the most fun part. According to the Maleficarum, what the witches would do was like take them and put them on a little tree and tend to them like birds, and they'd like make nests and scamper around, and it was quite an image, honestly. The phrase dick thief is super funny. Oh yeah, I will take other people's genitals until they learn to behave. Cause like, okay, listen. Like I said, oral sex is not everyone's thing. Yes, a tree. But like you've got to ask, you've got to talk about it. You've got to just don't assume, talk to your partner, find out what they want, find out what works for them. Everyone is different. Nothing is for everybody. Be a considerate partner, even if you're never going to see them again, even if you are only meeting each other for one night at a conference, afterwards you will both go back to living in different states. Be considerate. That's kind of like the summary at the end of the thing, but we've skipped to it right now because I got really fired up about the penis stealing witches. As we all do. So, that is going to bring us back to that emotionless sexual ideal. So having a serious conversation about your sexual desires and your needs and your consent can feel pretty intimate, which is why a lot of people don't do it with casual partners, because doesn't that sound like something somebody who caught feelings would do? That's sarcasm coming from me, but it's a pretty pervasive bad idea. Like somewhere along the line, the ideals of casual sex shifted from people engaging in sex without having or developing romantic feelings for each other to people engaging in sex without treating each other with anything better than the lowest common courtesy possible. Which maybe makes me sound like I'm heading back to Puritan minister land, but bear with me here, because what actually happens when we assume emotionless sex is not only normal but ideal is treating people in markedly worse ways than we did prior to having sex with them, as Wade described, feeling like we aren't allowed to ask for what we actually want or like Orenstein described, and eventually seriously wondering if it's okay to even treat our casual partners like people. Don't be a dick is a rule of life that anyone should live by. Yes, it is. It's like, I think that's the new golden rule. Just don't be a dick. So Wade found that a good chunk of her subjects, for one, just really looked at hookups as kind of bragging rights, like they would talk very openly about how they really didn't like the people they were sleeping with. And again, like, I'm not going to say you have to have like a deep friendship connection with everyone you bone down with. But a lot of them would actively talk about how, like, oh, like I don't even like him when we're sober. We both just like get drunk and bone, or like, oh yeah, like I can't stand her, but like she's really hot. So like having sex with her was cool. And like, hey, you've commodified that person to be an interesting story. Hey, see you, Mary. Thank you for popping in while you could. And that's this is going to be like confession time for me. So I read this book last summer, I think. My understanding of linear time is vague because I'm an 800-year-old bog witch. But I also read it for a class shortly before I graduated. And somewhere between the first time and the second time, I did some, self-reflecting and shit. And when we were reading the chapter where Wade talked about how students will use their hookups as just like a wacky story to tell, or like knowingly hook up with people, and even as they're in the process, be thinking about like, oh, this is going to be such a fun thing to talk about. Like, oh, can't wait to tell the lads that I scored with that attractive person. That's how real people talk. It kind of hit me because at one point in my life, a real thing that I said was, oh, at this point, I'm kind of only still trying to hook up with people so that I have fun stories to tell. Because, I'm not unsympathetic. Like, it feels good sometimes to be able to, like, pull out all those wacky stories, you know? Like, I do have a story that I tell with some regularity about the time a person I was hooking up with kind of kidnapped me. And no, I'm not going to tell it right now. I didn't get hurt. It's fine. At the chat, I am not telling you how many centuries old I am. You'll never take me alive. Um, so, like, I get it, but also that was a harmful thing because it it makes you, take your partners less seriously as people. I think it also is a really good way to distance yourself from. Ooh, wait, does anyone else feel like they totally missed the hookup culture train completely, or am I just a hermit? Um, yeah, Emily, I don't remember if you were on the first stream or not, but hookup culture is whack. Hookup culture is a lot of work that, like, not everyone is cut out for or enjoys. It is a wild story. It's not for everybody, and that's fine. But treating, the sexual encounters you've had as just like a wacky story to tell both diminishes the person as a person, like makes them like a one-dimensional thing. And it also is a way of distancing yourself, I think, from like seriously thinking about the impact that that experience had on you. Um, and again, that doesn't always mean you're in love with them, obviously, but it does, it is okay if the sex you had some kind of emotional impact on you or made you realize something about yourself, like I think all of my casual sexual experiences have taught me something about myself, and that can be very profound and very cool without meaning that you're fucking in love with them. Um, you know? And that's a thing we should accept. But that requires introspection and taking other people seriously, and also seriously examining the fact that having sex can impact us in a way other than falling in love, and that there's a scale, and that there's gray area and nuance to existence, and acknowledging the nuance of existence is frankly petrifying. So instead, it's just like, so you guys want to hear about the time I got kidnapped? And we leave it at that. Um, there's also more like, that's kind of the second hand, like after the sex has already happened and is over with and can be just like a fun story to tell. There's also like the much more immediate thing, like, for instance, Wade found that a good chunk of her subjects thought that holding hands with someone was a lot more intimate than giving or receiving a hand job, because there was a sense of emotional intimacy attached to physical contact that was not explicitly sexual. One of her subjects, like, very adamantly insisted that you can't have casual sex if you hold hands while you're doing it, and that automatically means you're making love. Sidebar, in my professional opinion as the sex witch, making love is a weird phrase that we should stop using. Ooh, over in the chat, I'm actively confused by where I fall on the arrow spectrum, so the obsession with not catching feelings just gives me hives. Hey, I hope you can, not to like shamelessly plug myself while you're already watching my stream, but I hope you can join us next week when I, an aromantic, and a friend of mine, a demi-romantic, have a great conversation about that. Anywho's, not to like insert an ad in the middle of this. No more making love. No, we woohoo like the Sims. Can we ban the word lovers? Yeah, we can. Making love should be reserved for baking cookies. I don't know how I feel about that. I made love in the kitchen today with a bowl of batter. No. Jesus Christ. So, but can't hold hands while you're having sex and you're making love. Gross. It's a thing that I've also run into, like, more than a few times when I'm answering sex ed questions over on my blog. I really vividly recall one anonymous asker who wanted to know if it was okay for them to want to stay and cuddle with their, friend with benefits when they were done having sex. And not even like if it was okay to ask for that, but like if it was okay to want that. And I was like, holy shit, yes, it's okay to want to be cuddled. I cannot tell you if it's going to be well received within the context of this relationship you're having, because I don't know your partner and I don't know what their boundaries for intimacy are. But it is okay to want that. It's okay to want things. It's okay to want a relation. It's okay to want interactions with the person you're banging outside of just banging them. That's fine. Also, again, having an interaction other than sex does not automatically mean you're in love, which seems to be what a lot of the fear is now. And that is directly tied to the fact that we have all this baggage and hang up around sex that says you cannot possibly have sex without falling in love. So we need to desperately disprove it. It's a very vicious cycle, and it turns hookups into like often a much more antagonistic, cold place than they need to be. And I hate that. And it really all just comes down to like, again, we don't want to have these conversations about what people are cool with, but we have to because everyone defines their intimacy parameters very differently. Like a really good example of this, again, from my own life, because I'm just compulsive oversharer, is that a while back, a friend of mine, like a dear, dear friend of mine, was meeting up with someone who she'd been talking to on Tinder for kind of a long time. And they lived in different states and they'd never met in person. So they decided they were going to make the most of their time together, their first time meeting, by just like crossing state lines. And one of them would come stay with the other for a couple days in their house. And then the other one would go back to the other's place and stay there for a couple days. And they were going to like basically cohabit for a week or so. But sex was like not an expectation because they wanted to wait and not rush into that. And my friend, God bless her heart, was like so happy about it and like ecstatic and like messaging our group chat, talking about how great it was to like go slow. And I was super happy for her. And also I was screaming on the inside because I was in hell, because in my world, going slow does not look like moving in with someone into their house for a few days on your first date. And that's fine. But it means that, we have very different standards of intimacy, and that would not have the same reaction to the same partner doing the same thing. And that needs to be talked about because there's no one thing that works for everybody. Some people don't mind moving in together for a few days, but want to wait on the sex, and that feels fine to them. Some people will bone down after one date, but probably will never be comfortable spending the night with somebody. That first one is my friend. That second one may or may not be me. It's me. So the problem with hookup culture and a lot of modern sexual culture as a whole then is that it presumes the same thing works for everyone, which is so that everyone, is a spigot of emotions waiting to go off. So that if we want to have a good hookup, everyone just has to turn it down immediately and never take it seriously or treat their partner like a person ever. Nothing could be further from the truth. The only way to find out what's too much for any particular partner is to have a frank conversation with them, no matter how scary it feels. And I think there are a lot of sources feeding into this aversion. A big one is definitely that a lot of popular visual media, and it's not just porn, really skips over the fact that discussion and negotiated consent and talking is an important part of sex. I'm not going to get too deep into that one right now because that is 100% its own stream and it's coming up soon. Ooh, I used to think that casual sex was the act of a woman tolerating sex and the man rewarding her with cuddles. This is fine. That is not surprising because that ties into like a long-running idea that the Victorians brought this around, because we can blame the Victorians for like so many things. But there's this idea that, men are interested in sex and women are interested in love, and women only tolerate sex to make their husbands happy because they love them and to reaffirm their romantic bond and all of that. Which you still see even now in our like super liberated, sexually free culture. That's a lie. We're not. Like there's a very, again, plugging Lisa Wade, there's a really interesting anecdote in this book that kind of illustrates how in hookup culture, the women are still like disproportionately treated more like they're the ones like prone to catching feelings and are like much more at risk of that than the men are. Like there's a really good story that one female student shares about like how one day the guy she'd been hooking up with asked to meet up, and he, came to see her and he was like, hey, so like I have to tell you something. I hooked up with another girl and I think I have like serious feelings for her and we're going to go out and I have to break up with you and we're done. And the girl was like, okay. And like she was fine. This was just a guy she'd been casually banging, and she was like, all right, have a nice time. That's nice. And he was like, I'm really sorry. I know you must be really hurt. And she's like, I'm good. And he's like, it's okay. Like, I understand. I feel for you. You're going to get through this. And she's like, I'm fucking fine. Are you good? Men are whiny if you don't like them. Yeah, yeah. We could spend a long time talking about how like the supposed fragility of women is a lot of male projection, but I think I just summed it up in a sentence. Um, but women are presumed to be, a lot more emotional than men are, and a lot more like prone to that, and a lot more susceptible to being overwhelmed by their stupid lady brains. We talked a little bit about that in the Twilight stream, actually. It's a curriculum I'm building here. Everything goes together. It's not, that's way too much work for me. Maybe if I do this for a long time, I can structure it in some kind of way that makes chronological sense, but today is not that day. Um, um, but yeah, so there's this cool set. So on top of like everything else that's a little bit whack about like catching feelings being bad and hookup culture, there's this like sexist double standard that like obviously women are inherently worse about being cool about sex. Like, dude, listen, a lot of women are already going into sex with their guard like all the way up. So you're really underestimating them here. Yeah, dudes do get real dramatic about a lot of things. They're very sensitive creatures. So I think another big thing that this stems from, in addition to all, this baggage about sex being something that's like both super serious and super commodified in our current culture, and media not really providing us with an accurate or realistic script about how to go about talking about sex and what we want. There's also just kind of like this widespread aversion to sincerity and talking about things that are uncomfortable. And you start seeing it showing up in people really early. I recently did some work teaching sex ed with a group of kids age 4th to 6th grade. I spent 10 weeks with them, and these kids are the coolest. Like, they're so smart and, lively and opinionated. And I was like obsessively taking notes on everything they said because it was all so cool and smart. And they really like to insult things with the word corny is the word they use right now. And like everything they don't like books that they thought were dumb, the homework we asked them to do where they were supposed to talk to family members about puberty, the group guidelines for making sure everyone was having a respectful discussion and being heard. It was all corny, and it really showed up on days when we talked about things that they were uncomfortable with. When we talked about like gender stereotypes and what else were they cool with? I thought I could get away with not looking at my outline for like 5 seconds, and I was wrong. Guess who overestimated her damn self? Bullying. They were really down to talk about bullying. Social media, they all had a lot to say about that. And it would just go, and it was fine. But on days when we were like, okay, we're going to talk about reproductive sex, or we're going to talk about the changes your body's going to go through during puberty, that was when they would shut down. Suddenly the lesson was corny. They were a lot more likely to answer the discussion questions with jokes rather than like, real sincere input. And you could just, watch them clam up. It was very easy to predict when that was going to happen. And it was usually when it was about more uncomfortable topics. Yeah, I'm seeing some discussion over here about like, I think all of our generations had words for this, like that's awkward or that was gay, was a dark period. But I think every generation has a word that we use to write off like, cringy, definitely cringy. I think there are a lot of words that a lot of generations have used to be like, that smacks of sincerity. I don't fuck with that. That might be a new sticker. Shit. But on days when we got into the topics they were palpably uncomfortable with, and especially uncomfortable talking about, that's when they would kind of turn down on us. And note that like being uncomfortable talking about something did not mean they were not interested. One of the most like illuminating experiences I had teaching this class was there was a student who was like really the most vocally disgusted of everyone in the class. Like every time we mentioned like, the word vagina or penis, she'd go, that's inappropriate. She didn't want to like even look at like a sanitary pad in a wrapper. I need to break my flow for a second because the cat is sitting outside my door screaming. Please talk amongst yourselves. Arcane baby boy, what's up? Welcome back. Come here, little man. Okay, yes. Someone needs attention, and it's this cat. Okay. He's probably not going to stay. Oh, God! Okay. Cool. All right. So, there was this girl. She didn't even want to like look at a pad in a wrapper. She really hated anytime we used the words for genitals at all. But when we played a game that was filling in the vocab words, um, she knew all of them like immediately without hesitation. And when I had a chance, I was like, "Hey, I thought you thought this was super gross. How do you know all the vocab? I'm not judging. I'm genuinely curious." And this sweet, sweet child looks at me. She goes, "Oh, I thought the book was really interesting. I read the whole thing, but it's gross." And that was just wild. Like, and I think that applied to all of the students to an extent. And I think that carries on into a lot of us as adults, especially young adults doing hookup culture. But like, it also goes on because you don't just automatically become fully sexually self actualized and capable of talking about things one day if no one intervenes. Um, but it's interesting and it's relevant. And we know it is. And we're attracted to learning more about it and talking about it. But then we shut down when the time comes to actually have a serious discussion about it. The forbidden knowledge, TM. It doesn't need to be forbidden. No one made it forbidden. We just made all these stupid rules for ourselves. We put ourselves in this box of not wanting to know or talk about things. Oh my god. Okay, the cat just tried to jump on me, like up onto my leg, and he slipped right off, and he put his claws in me, and it still didn't work. Hey, dumbass, do you want me to lift you up here? Okay. Sorry about that. He's a doofus. This is why I tried to just toss him out at the start. Please. Oh my god. Okay. Hey, Arcane. Arcane. I love my cat. You kind of, it starts very early, this aversion to talking about things seriously or with any sense. Listen, I'm letting him stay. He's still here. He's in the corner. I'm not stopping him, clearly. Catch 12-year-old me curl up in the closet with the tome of forbidden knowledge. That sounds like 12-year-old you with porn, and I'm sorry. We are just spitting out a lot of euphemisms today. We got lovemaking for baking. We've got bag of quirks for the genitals of your choice. Oof. Yeah, the US is into sex, but really against talking about it. We have a very contradictory culture, and it's shit. It's bad. We're still, all joking about evil Puritan ministers aside, we never really got over that Puritan ideology, and it shows. Some of you never got over your Puritan roots, and it shows. Not to meme the stream, but oh my god. Okay. Way ahead of myself in the outline now. Okay, so I get it. Talking to someone seriously about feelings and sexual desires and all the nitty gritty of your preferences and your intimacy boundaries can be a really scary prospect. And I don't just mean I get that theoretically, like that's something that I've struggled with immensely in my own life. Back in the first stream, I told you how I just didn't have sex in 2018 because it required a lot of work that I didn't want to put in. And that included having those discussions in addition to like the process of actually going out and finding people. I built up a bit of an aversion. In 2017, I left behind a relationship that crumbled atrociously when communication failed to take place, and a string of casual sexual encounters that ranged from confusing to ambivalent to like actually upsetting at the girl who kind of kidnapped me. And at least part of that was all because I hadn't yet learned to communicate and comport myself in healthy ways to actually advocate for what I wanted. And honestly, I'm still working on it. I think this recent experience was a really positive one that's going to get me going in the right direction because now I've got that glimpse of what good, honest sex can look like. But it's still something I need to work on this year and also for the rest of my life. And I'd like to invite all of you to join me in nurturing that ability in ourselves if that's something you're interested in, because everyone you will ever have sex with, whether it's your spouse or it's a room full of strangers you met at a conference or somebody behind a Denny's, whatever, they deserve to be treated like a human being with a full range of needs, even if you're never going to see them again. And you deserve the same. And we need to accept and embrace that all of us are feeling things all the time and that it's natural and that it isn't bad, and build spaces where that's okay. And that is my spiel. Thank you. Now, I like that I just finished that and immediately looked at the chat and saw hot take, wizard spell books are just fake covers for erotica. What's been going on over here while I was doing my spiel? Oh, are we talking about how everyone read? Oh man, are we getting into everyone's fanfic backstory? Y'all want my fanfic backstory? I learned what a clitoris was by reading fanfiction. So there's that. You have fanfiction indirectly to thank for the sex witch's sexual awakening. If you do something behind a Denny's, there's an 80% chance it's a fae. Okay, even if the being you are not, even if the being you are having sex with is not a human, they deserve to be treated like a person with complex needs. That is the official sex witch stance on that. So that's that. If we can pause the fan fiction discussion for 2 seconds, does anyone have any like follow-up questions or want clarification on anything, or congrats on finding your clitoris through bubble jets? Jesus Christ. If anyone is not talking about fan fiction or how you found your clitoris, please feel free to do any like end of stream questions or follow-up you have, anything I can clarify on for your edification. Just anything that like was not clear enough the first time. I'm going to be dropping a couple links for y'all after this one, including Peggy Orenstein's TED Talk and a short link actually to something about the witches stealing penises and putting them on a little tree, because I thought you'd all want to learn more about that, because that's big interesting. As long as we're all being so poppin' in the group chat, I do have a little bit of a favor to ask of y'all. So for the demi-romantic, aromantic stream that we've got coming up next week, I thought it would be neat if my guest expert and I had like some questions to like actively like read off and just respond to. So I'm about to drop y'all a link to a form where you can like anonymously submit questions about aromantic and demi-romantic identities. If you think of any, you can drop them there. Any other thoughts about teaching the small sex ed? Oh my God. Okay. If I could go on about this for like an entire stream, I would. I think that might be like ethically dubious, because like obviously I'm not going to tell you these children's names, but I still feel like a little wishy-washy about doing that. But it was a really great experience. It was a 10-week thing. I didn't expect to like it so much at all, but it was phenomenal and really like jazzed me up about working with younger kids than I was used to. Like I said, they're all so smart and so insightful and intelligent. And it's not like I thought kids were dumb before, but I just wasn't expecting like the levels of awareness they, displayed very often. It was really interesting seeing like what the world looks like from that age, because so I taught this at a local church that is a very like liberal, left-leaning, white guilt kind of church. So like the kids there are all like super down with like LGBT identities, and they think homophobia doesn't exist anymore, which is cute. They think racism is over, which is cute. It was really interesting seeing which kids were like, oh, like divorce is bad and shouldn't happen, and which kids were like, my parents are divorced. Like at a young age, like they're very like a lot of kids are very sure that like you should never get divorced and that's bad, whereas like other kids like, my parents are already divorced, that's normal. Just like kind of like seeing how the world shakes out through their eyes is very cool. I might come up with a stream where like I talk about that in like the most ethical way I can find without like getting into names. Is there anything you think I should try to help my little sis with? She's in 5th grade and we got Alabama sex ed. Alabama sex ed is bad, and I know that because I keep up with the Guttmacher Institute's surveys every year on what each state puts in their sex ed curriculum, and Alabama's bleak. I would just try to let your little sister know as much as possible that you are available to talk to her about anything she wants to know. I would tell her straight up, honestly, that her class probably will not tell her everything that she needs to know. I remember my younger sister was super reluctant to talk about it when she was going through her sex ed class, and I kind of hooked her in by telling her that she did not pee out of her vagina, and she was like, you don't? And I was like, nope. And then I had her. And I think it's been good. She's been pretty down to come to me with any questions ever since. And it's been like 5 or 6 years. So I think I did okay there. I don't know off the top of my head how bad North Carolina is. I know Alabama's like one of the big bad states. suffice to say, the further south you skew, the bleaker it tends to get. Um, hang on, I'm gonna actually see if I can find that link right now for you. God, I have it. I literally started typing in Guttmacher and it immediately brought up this link. Okay, I'm about to drop something in the group chat where if you live in the United States, you can check your state and their requirements. There's a fun resource for you. I will also drop that in the link after this. I didn't think we were going to talk about this, but that's really exciting. I use these statistics every year when I revise the presentations and workshops I lead about sex ed and how it often woefully fails LGBTQ students. The stream did cut out for 0.2 seconds. Well, we were talking about sex ed the whole time, but we are specifically talking about in-school public United States sex ed now, like the very literal sense. I use the phrase sex ed kind of liberally to mean like anytime I talk about sex in a way that challenges people's preconceived ideas about sex, but we are talking about school stuff. Let's see. I have an Alabamians for sex ed shirt. Yeah, Jordan, I love you. Guttmacher is the bomb. They're very good. They make it very easy to figure out exactly in what ways your state is fucked up. Most of them are in considerable ways. Oh, your sex ed never mentioned lesbians. Here's a fun story from my sister's sex ed again. So when she was a freshman in high school and I was a freshman in college, she texted me furious one day to let me know that she asked her sex ed teacher how. So in Montana, you don't have to talk about safe sex or protected sex or condoms. My school was like good, very low bar, and that they usually squeezed in condoms at least. But then my sister asked her sex ed teacher how it would work if, two boys or two girls wanted to have sex. And her sex ed teacher just immediately said, that doesn't happen, which was ridiculous because this was a room full of high school 14 and 15-year-olds in the year 2014. They all knew Glee existed. They all knew gay people were real. You weren't fooling anyone. And on the one hand, I understand this is just an underpaid gym teacher who probably doesn't want to be putting up with this. But, that doesn't happen? Come on. Girl, that happens. You had at least one gay who had already passed through that very school. And my best friend, and those two nice gay boys, and that one girl who always hit me up when I went home for Christmas for 3 years. So at least 5 gays had already existed in that very school, all in 1 year. So that's what my sex ed experience was like. We're probably going to do a whole episode revolving around various curriculum issues and why I think those also fuck people up, particularly if you're LGBT and you are in a state where you were told you don't exist. Yeah, some people did learn that gays exist through Glee. Keep dragging Allison. Sorry I cackle. I'm a bog witch and I'm 900 years old. Yeah, so that's, I'm going to make a note about doing a sex ed episode, except I'm not because I've lost my pen. So I'm just going to make a note up here. Cackles are good. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for the end of this gorgeous stream that we've put together here? I like how this shook out. I appreciate how vocal everyone's been tonight. I hope we're getting more comfy with this the longer we go. I already dropped my survey on you. Rest assured, for those of y'all who also follow me on the Blue Hell, I will be bringing that around again. This is a friendly reminder for anybody who's interested that I have a tiny Patreon going and you can support me for literally $1 a month. If you go bigger, you'll get really wacky shit. I just put up the first video of me baking snickerdoodles in real time. Miraculously did not burn my entire apartment down, but there was a lot of smoke and it was very concerning. But the snickerdoodles came out great. For President's Day, I'm going to have my first erotica reading for the $5 and up patrons. It is President's Day themed, and it's going to be exactly as whack as you think. And of course, there are stickers for the $10 a month patrons. It's going to be it's going to be in reference to the Twilight episode. It's going to say murdered for complicated vampire political reasons, and there's a little coffin on it. It's very cute, and you will get that sent to me. Oh, from Allison. God, can I give a TED Talk on that Hell show? By which I assume you mean Glee. I think we just planned our 69th episode. Buckle up, everybody. Cool. All right. So if that is going to be Sorry, Jordan, it's too good to pass up. If that is going to be everybody's questions/feedback for the night, I'm going to start winding the stream down. I'm going to end it. Fighting about Glee seems like a good way to go out. We just hit the hour mark, so I'm going to go ahead and hit the end stream button. I love you all so much. As always, if you have any follow-up questions or also ideas for future episodes that you want to see talked about. Oh no, when I played D&D with Mackenzie, she would recap last week's session by saying, and that's what you missed on Glee, and it would give me whiplash. I'm a very good DM. Good night, everybody. I love you all so